Hi, I'm Emily. For my video, I'm going to discuss the last two chapters of Blank and my thoughts about the book as a whole. Chapter 5 starts out with an example about music from an artist named Kenna. This example was very important to me, and I related to it very well because it deals with something that I'm also learning about in my marketing class right now. Everyone thought that Kenna was going to be a great and successful artist, and they all loved his music, but then when they put it to the test in the market research, it failed, and the results were not very good, and they said his song shouldn't be played on the radio because it wasn't going to be popular. In class, we learned that market research is very important because it may seem like a product is going to do very well because a lot of people in a certain area really like it, but that doesn't necessarily mean that the whole population will feel the same way. However, in the Coke and Pepsi example, the research said that the new Coke formula that they created to compete with Pepsi was going to do really well and everyone was going to love it. But then when they actually sold it, it was very unpopular, and they ended up having to take it back and go back to their old formula because people hated the new Coke and it did terribly. So this is kind of the opposite of the first example, and it shows that research and tests aren't always good indicators of what people actually think. Going back to the Kenna example, his career never really took off, even though so many people thought he was going to be great and he was going to be the next big thing, and they all loved his songs because his songs failed the market research, so they never played his song on the radio. This shows that tests can't always predict things very well, and they can't always predict what people are actually going to think. So that's going to be useful in the future because it shows us that tests aren't always going to tell us how people actually think, and you have to really know people yourself to know what they'll think and to make decisions about big things like that. Chapter 6 begins with a very sad and serious story. It dealt with something that we've seen far too often in the news lately. It was really sad, and it dealt with the loss of a life of an innocent person, but it's a prime example of a case where effective thin splicing would have allowed these people to avoid such a terrible event. That is a really big reason, in my opinion, why people should read this book, or at least be taught this information so that we can hopefully all try to avoid situations like that. This chapter deals with more thin splicing and mind reading. It gives a lot of examples where people can pick up something about a person just from looking at someone's face and seeing all the features of it and to see what they're actually thinking. One of the examples they gave of this that I remembered most was that of a toddler looking at an adult's face when something happens because they know they can find the answer in someone's face. I really related to this example because I work at a daycare, so I'm around kids a lot, and I see that often, that kids look up into your face when something happens because they know if they do something wrong, they can see what you're thinking about it in your face, or if you do something, they'll look at your face to see why you did that, or what's going to happen next, or the reasoning behind it. Overall, this chapter was very dark and serious, and many examples dealt with killing people or guns, but that did make them very effective and got the point across, and hopefully will show us that that's why this information is important so that we can avoid those kind of things, hopefully in the future. One of the discussion questions for Chapter 6 alluded to Ekman and Friesen's research, which is very important, but it would be kind of hard for just anyone to pick up on after reading about their research because they studied it for so many years, and there were so many different things that they learned about people's faces, and to read their mind or see what's going on just by looking at their face. An example of this was that of politicians and celebrities being filmed and stuff. You can't always tell what they're actually thinking because they try to hide it with their face or maybe lie or not tell the truth to sound better. That would make it really hard to judge people just by looking at their face, and just anybody looking at them might not be able to tell as well as the researchers would because they studied it for so long. This chapter is important for the future because we may not be able to pick up on every single facial feature like the researchers and be able to tell everything that someone's feeling just by looking at their face, but it can help us to realize that we need to not just take a quick look at someone and make a decision. We actually need to study their face or make decisions more focused and study them a little bit longer than just a quick snap judgment of someone. Overall, I thought the book was very interesting and very important for this class in the future. We will be dealing with other people and making decisions for our whole lives, so all the advice and tips found in this book will be very helpful. We aren't going to be media experts just by reading this book, because we learned a lot of stuff and a lot of people studied it for a really long time to be able to know everything that they know. But now at least we're aware of the concepts, and I know that making quick decisions and not wasting time thinking too much, because oftentimes your first thought is correct, so that will really help me when making decisions in the future. Also, I know that reading people's faces and looking more closely and carefully can be very important in reading them and telling what they're thinking and not making snap, incorrect judgments about people that could lead to a really bad situation. Also, I know that thin slicing and mind reading can help prevent terrible tragedies and should be used just like in the examples that we read about, so that hopefully terrible things like that won't happen. I know that I'll use this in my daily life, and especially in the future in a job or some situation like that. So I'm really glad that I read this book. It was really helpful.